Alright gang, this is Quad Squad with another video for you today.
Today we're taking a journey through time about the automotive industry and how it's affected society.
We're gonna pedal the metal all about the automobile.
You guys ready? Let's ride.
People use cars every day and everywhere. The automobile is a staple of society, especially in America. The amount of people using cars has exploded since the early 1900s. In fact, there's over 273 million cars on the roadways today. But travel and transportation has been around since the early times of society. Brandon, don't you know something about this?
Yeah, Quad Squad.
Would you like to ride in my Rocket 69? Rocket 69, Rocket 69. Well, would you like to ride in my Rocket 69?
Humans have been using alternative means of transportation longer than civilization has existed. Originally, we needed to cover distance faster. The world was too big and resources too scarce. So naturally, we found something that was faster and stronger than us. In the mid-3000s BC, horses and oxen became a preferred form of transportation. This became one of the first steps towards the civilization that we see today.
You love the new world, I'm gonna take you in. Rocket 69, Rocket 69. We'll take off for a star and the moon is not too far. Rocket 69, Rocket 69.
As settlements and towns formed, the need for transportation was no longer enough. We needed to exchange goods and services. Thanks to a brand new discovery called the wheel, we could begin using carts and wagons to carry people and supplies longer distances without worry. These two objects became the primary source of transportation across most cultures for centuries. The use of these vehicles led to paved roads, which made exotic goods easily accessible. As towns became cities, which became states, kingdoms, or even empires, our roads evolved and made improvements built around the use of vehicular traffic. These simple wheeled devices then began to evolve as well. With cities forming thanks to the increased connectedness of other cultures, what it meant to live changed. Humans no longer worked to survive, we worked to enjoy ourselves. This produced the precursor to the cars we see today. Carriages were covered wagons that allowed for better protection from the elements. This protection meant more comfortable travel, which led to more people traveling to find their land, explore other cities, and enjoy the outdoors in harsher climates. As covered transportation was becoming popular, carriages became stagecoaches, which were largely for luxury use. Traveling started becoming a societal symbol that only the truly wealthy could afford, without making a career of it. However, the current technology began to limit the growth of transportation. The issue was, animals could only do so much. The amount of horses needed to carry nicer carriages was becoming ridiculous, and our roadways couldn't handle it. We needed a new method of travel that was cheaper and more efficient. James Watts knew the exact answer. Ancient Romans and Greeks used to run their wagons along stone tracks that would prevent unpredictable animals from moving off their directed path. In 1712, Watts discovered how to pump water through a steam engine. Combined with the method of ancient tracks, he helped create the thriving locomotive industry we see today. As steam engines began evolving, alternative fuels were also being discovered. Coal was growing in popularity, and so many mines were being operated to find this valuable resource that a train, which ran on coal, became the popular method of transportation. This competition between coal and steam power drove both railway-based vehicles to push themselves further. After some time, locomotives became less focused on transport of goods and worked its way further into another form of luxury transportation. Thanks to many private and public investors, the railways became further integrated into society, becoming the most reliable way to travel cross-country in the ever-expanding world. While steam engines ruled the rails, horses were still pulling carriages in the city. It was time for local travel to change. There had been motor vehicles thought up and invented since Da Vinci, but thanks to the work of Nicolas Joseph Cugnot's steam wagon and his graceful crash into a brick wall at less than a mile per hour, the automotive industry wasn't looking promising. Britain even passed laws requiring someone walk in front of these steam wagons, waving a red flag and blowing a horn, just to ensure that the brick wall wouldn't be a careless pedestrian the next time. As the 1800s went on, electric cars were being tested as they competed with steam to produce the most efficient vehicle. Over the next 2 centuries, while steam-powered cars were quickly losing their, steam, and electric vehicles couldn't travel more than 50 miles at 20 miles per hour. Meanwhile, petrol was introduced in the 80s and becoming more efficient by the day. Throughout these 2 centuries, we saw improvements such as the modern engine designed by Carl Benz, the assembly line built cars by Henry Ford, and the paved streets we use today. But one thing hasn't changed. Man's desire to be better has brought us from animal domestication to vehicular transport all the way to automotive travel. We have further evolved these technologies into media, pop culture, and the daily enjoyment of all generations.
The car really has been a big part of how we live today. Since we decided to make it part of our daily lives, we've had to shape how we live around it. As cities grew and expanded, they needed to account for the automobile and its impact on the city. Zach, you lived in a city. Can you tell us about this?
I sure did. Let me fill you in. Brandon, take a turn up here. Cities and their streets were formed by natural patterns of travel, rivers determining where cities would form and grow, pedestrian travel deciding street size and path, rail services and streetcars even creating a pattern of travel for cities. But these too would be overcome by the overgrowing automobile industry. Initially, cars were having to function on a street system that was not designed or adopted for the automobile. Sharing the street with horses, wagons, streetcars, bicycles, and pedestrians. In many cities, like Los Angeles and Houston, pedestrians have become like an endangered species. The automobile had the advantage of being a private form of transportation, with freedom of movement that gave the driver the choice of endless places to travel to. Once the automobile was accessible to the masses, there was no stopping the way it would shape cities. Roads needed to meet standard sizes for cars, and from there needed to keep ever expanding to fit in more lanes, to fit in more cars, to create more overpasses, and always add more and more and more to get cars moving faster. It's estimated that 1/2 of a modern American city is dedicated to streets, roads, parking lots, service stations, driveways, signals and traffic lights, and car dealerships. Roads built from multiple layers of crushed stones replaced with concrete and asphalt over time, being better to able to withstand and support automobiles. Space allocated for other forms of transportation ultimately shrank in turn. Sidewalks, bicycle lanes attached to the sides of the roads. The automobile also allowed the flight of middle-class families to the suburbs, outside of the cities themselves. Patios on the fronts of houses were replaced by large garages, and fresh-cut lawns could no longer be stepped on. The car has been one of the greatest shapers of the city, and likely will continue to be for the foreseeable future.
We may not notice it because we're so accustomed to it, but cities really are built around the vehicle. Now, even though automobiles get a bad rep, they've brought people closer together and made the world a little bit smaller. Traveling between cities has never been more convenient, with the use of highways and interstates to connect these large populations of people. Angel, can you take us to the highway?
I sure can. You know what that means. Road trip! Any public or private road or another public way on land. The word highway goes back to the elevated levels of Roman roads that had a mound or hill formed by the earth from the side, ditches thrown toward the center, thus a highway. On August 2, 1956, Missouri became the first state to award a contract with the new interstate construction founded. President Eisenhower favored this interstate system because it was a way of evacuating cities if the United States were ever to be attacked by an atomic bomb. The defense was the primary reason for the interstate system, thus creating the program and the Interstate Defense Highway Act of 1956. Traffic grew on the highway because of the geography through which it passed. Much of the highway was essentially flat, and this made the highway a popular truck route. For example, one of the very popular highways that existed throughout history is US 66. It became the main road of travel for these people. Often, people through this were either vacationers, normal citizens, or workers. The route passed through numerous small towns. With the growing traffic on the highway, it has helped create the rise of businesses, such as service stations and restaurants. Much of the early highway was a gravel or graded dirt. Due to the efforts of the United States Highway 66 Association, US 66 became the first highway to be completely paved in 1938. Several places were dangerous as well though. More than one part of the highway was nicknamed Bloody 66, and gradually work was done to realign these segments to remove these dangerous curves. So much of these mistakes throughout the highway were literally fixed. Popular demand in highways has slowly decreased the popularity in small towns, as slowly making them being forgotten as people keep passing by them to major cities.
Automobiles of the future will be as different from today as the automobiles differed from the horse and buggy. Driverless cars will be significantly more energy efficient, safer, less damaging to the environment, and more economical to operate than any mode of transportation in the human experience. Electric cars can cut down on their carbon emissions, and who knows, our cars may even take towards the sky.
Well, Quad Squad, we sure learned a lot today.
We learned a lot about the history of cars, cities, and highways.
And most importantly, friendship.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to ride.
See you next time.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.
Pretty good character.
You guys ready? Let's ride.
Oh, God. Big up.
Yeah! Come on!
It's just a scratch.
Here.
Sorry.
Just a scratch, he said.
Okay.
Here we go. You guys ready? Do it. Come on, keep going.
Fuck.
Keep going.